All right. Hello, everyone. Come on into All Things Odd. I'm Dr. Natalie Phillips.
I'm Dr. Hannah Galloway.
And I'm Whitney.
All right. We are going to head to our YouTube channel here. So I'm going to have, let's have Whitney do our YouTube channel.
Okay. All right, guys. So we do have a YouTube, which is a really good way to keep up on all the videos that we've done recently and videos that we've actually done in the past. It looks like we have more subscribers. I think
73. Yeah, it says 73. So I think
so that's exciting. But as you can see, we have a bunch of videos. We have a bunch of little playlists too. So you can actually click into those. And, you know, if there's a certain topic that you're interested in, we've maybe talked about it once or twice before. But it's a really good tool to use, one for if you have maybe someone who would find a topic interesting, but maybe they don't have social media. We do put this out on various platforms. So this is a good option where you can actually just send them the video through YouTube. They don't have to have an account. But then also, if we are going to be gone, not in the office, we're going to have to miss a week. This is another good way, if you really, really miss us, that you can watch one of our other videos or shows that you maybe really enjoyed, want to know more about, or maybe you actually missed. So, yeah.
All right. Okay. Thanks, Whitney.
Yeah.
Okay, so today for our show, as you can see, if you've seen it in our comments, this is actually going to be Whitney's last show. For now, we're going to say, we're going to put that in there in parentheses here. But next week is her last week, and actually next Thursday, we are going to be celebrating her, so we won't be on with our show next Thursday. But that being said, we just wanted to kind of dedicate this show to just thanking her for the last year. It's been, you know, as you know, you've seen multiple students with Dr. Galloway and myself, and Whitney is moving on for now. And she has some exciting news. So we're going to start with just kind of if you're joining in and you're watching, you know, please say hello, say goodbye to Whitney with us as we are celebrating her today. I know that we have some people that tune in all the time, but you know, with Whitney moving on, we're going to kind of talk a little bit more before we get to what she's doing next. Let's talk about maybe what was your most favorite thing that you enjoyed, or maybe even a patient that you saw that you could remember. We're kind of totally putting her on the spot. So I'm kind of giving her
I love it.
Think about a patient or something like that.
Yeah. So one thing I love about being here is because we're a private practice, smaller practice, we're really able to keep working with the same patients, which is really nice. Whether it's, you know, Dr. Galloway or Dr. Phillips does, you know, the testing, and then I'm doing a hearing aid, you know, follow-up. It's been really nice to actually be able to walk with a few patients. So I have a couple. There's one patient that actually, my journey with them actually started before I was even here. He was a patient that I had the opportunity to test at my medical placement, and he qualified for we suspected that he might qualify for a cochlear implant. So that audiologist at that practice, she was like, "Where are you going for your externship?" And I, you know, was coming to Audiology Center, and this gentleman happened to live in the area. So it kind of made sense for him to possibly come here. So Dr. Galloway did his CI evaluation, and he qualified, and he has since got his implant. And so I've been able to sit in on his activation, some follow-up appointments. So it's just been really cool to see just the insane growth that he's had within a year. I mean, he came in not really wearing hearing aids all that often, and now he's performing amazingly. So that's just has been really fun. I have another patient that came in for, vestibular testing. And after we did her eval and I went over her balance results, we were talking about her hearing loss. And she was like, yeah, they said it, it's not that bad. And I looked at it and I was like, well, you actually do have a pretty significant loss. And after, we discussed, she ended up coming back for a hearing aid live listening experience where patients get to come in and try demo hearing aids for 2 weeks. And every time we see her, she just says, like, I just had no idea. She has some girls that live up in the same home as her. And she's like, I just thought they were super quiet, and now it's fun. Like, I get to hear the little things in the kitchen, and I don't know, we have great patients here, so I could really go on and on. But I think just being able to walk with patients, I don't know. I mean, I've never truly worked in a hospital setting, but because of the way we care about our patients, we want this to not be we'll test your hearing, you're going to get hearing aids, see ya. Kind of like, I feel like maybe some of those big box stores are. We're really invested in you. And so because of that, we get to care about you not only as a patient, but as a person. So could really go on and on. We have great patients here.
Yeah, I definitely, I know both the patients that you're talking about, and it's so exciting to see, you can see one patient go through the same process and have a totally different experience, not a bad experience, just, experience different things or tell you different things. And so we've luckily been able to have quite a few cochlear implants here on the last half of your time here, which has been exciting. So, and even more random that you saw him at another clinic, and then ended up being able to see him here as well.
Yeah, it's been really cool.
Was there something in audiology, how some people are just like, oh, I absolutely love this part of audiology. Was there something that you found in this last, in your 4th year, or just even not just with us, but just anywhere where you're just kind of like, oh yeah, I can totally see this is what I want to continue doing?
Yes. So, before I came here, if you guys, I have my very first video. So if you really want to go back, you can actually see the very first video that I'm on with our weekly show. But I talk a little bit about my research project that I did, which was focused on noise-induced hearing loss, noise exposure, and I still really do love that. I remember coming here as I think I was a 3rd year, and I was able to shadow both of you and Mary Kate, who was the resident at the time. And I kind of knew that I wanted to go here, and I got to see a few full vestibular appointments. And I remember sitting in my vestibular class, and I was like, I have to pay attention. I mean, you should pay attention, but I was like, I have to pay attention because if I go here, I'm going to be doing this. But it's not something that I really knew if I was going to enjoy. And I think that's probably been one of my most favorite things, just because, it's interesting. I have so many patients who are like, you're looking at my eyeballs. Like, how is this related to my ears? And it's really fun to do education. I see weird stuff and I go ask you guys about it, still to this day, but I just think it's a really cool area of audiology that's very specialized. Again, you don't really get it at a lot of smaller practices. That's something you typically have to go elsewhere for. And so to be able to have the time to work with these patients, talk with these patients, we, get to know a lot of physical and occupational therapists in the area, which is really nice. So I think the relationship there, I got to test a patient that actually had a full eval a year and a half ago, and then she came back and we saw that there was improvement, which was really cool to see. So I would say that's one area. The other area would be hearing aids. So when you are at the school I'm at and you go to clinic, you just have a 3-hour clinic spot. You have no idea what's going to be put there. It's just kind of luck of the draw. You're not typically following up with lots of similar patients, unless it just happens that, your time on that day always works for them. And so I had done a lot of hearing evaluations, but I think I had even told you guys, like, I really haven't seen much with hearing aids, and really only one type of hearing aid. And so one really cool thing about being here is we work with all of the manufacturers. And so I've gotten to look at different software. We've had different reps and audiologists from the different manufacturers come in, talk to us about, what makes their devices unique and special. And, maybe when you have a patient come in and they start telling you, things that they are interested in, difficult environments, what they're hoping their, devices would do for them, it kind of throws, little like alarm bells, like, oh, maybe this would be a good fit. And then patients are able to try that. So, I mean, I remember, unless it was anything but the brand that my school worked with, I was like, I'm terrified. I don't know anything about this. And now it's nice because I feel a lot more confident about really any manufacturer can walk in and, you look at the software program and you kind of know, like, oh, this is that. And if I do this, this is going to work with that. And so that's a really unique opportunity too, that I didn't see in some of my other internships, is just, the ability to have good relationships with all of the main manufacturers. And it's nice when a patient walks in and they have, an interest in one manufacturer, or maybe they're asking you between two, to have the knowledge to say, this is what I know about it. These are how these two compare. And then, being able to let them try them out. So yeah, I would say that's another area that I've really liked, is learning more about hearing aids.
Well, and as a student too, one thing that kept coming up for me was, people are bringing in these other brands of hearing aids that maybe you haven't worked with as much, but then also they're older technology because maybe they bought them 5 years ago or 6 years ago. So if you know audiology, everything's wireless now, but it didn't used to be. So it's like digging through the box of cords to figure out how we could program this, or getting the old version of the software, and making sure we have that. So I always kind of dreaded that as a student, but it really does provide the best learning opportunity, because if you weren't even going to school when those products existed, they're still out there. And it's like, you become somewhat of like a historian of how do we hook this up? What software do we use? All that.
I think there was one time that Dr. Phillips and I were talking, and we were like, we might have to use like the little strips to put in and I was like, I've never done that. I don't know what would that look like? What would that mean? And I think it ended up being a non-issue, and it was wireless. But yeah, like you said, there's hearing aids, they're always, manufacturers are always trying to improve sound quality, always trying to improve noise reduction, which is great. But you still have people who are, happy with their devices, and they are older, and, or maybe they're just not ready to upgrade. And so you still do need to know how, when that patient walks in the door, you want them to have confidence in you as a provider. So it is a good learning opportunity, but it is also a little bit scary.
Yeah. I had a couple during my rotation. So Natalie was my supervisor way back when, and we had some trim pot hearing aids. So before, digital hearing aid technology, you actually made the adjustments with these little dials on the outside of the hearing aid. And I'd done it in Guatemala since, because people had brought in some hearing aids that had those. And really you just do a listening check, adjust the dials, and then by your ear, tell what changed, which from a student's perspective, I knew, but I wasn't confident in myself. I'm like, wait, is this the high cut? Like trying to figure it out. But I remember that being, I had fixed one, or, made the adjustment. And then I go into Natalie and I'm like, how do I record that I did that? There's no computer print off. She's like, oh, you draw a picture of the face of the hearing aid and then draw arrows of where you had the trim pots. I'm like, no way. That's really So Whitney, if you didn't know that,
I didn't know that.
That's how you do it.
Mm-hmm. But that was also when paper charts were a thing, right? So I'm sure what you could do is still draw it with the arrows, and then take a picture of it, and then take that picture and put it in the chart too. So,
yeah.
It's like so crazy how things
it is.
Most recently, I did it in Guatemala. No charts, no pictures, but it was better than not having hearing
Yeah.
aids. So.
And you can describe it too, right? You can say a little
Right.
bit to the right,
Yeah.
or 1 o'clock, or 2 o'clock, or 3 o'clock,
Right.
or whatever,
Yeah.
But that's kind of funny. So I just remember when I went out to UNC, and I was with like 4 or 5 other people talking about our different environments and placements and everything. And I remember when I went, and Whitney was one of the students, like seriously, there's like a whole room of students, and they were all there. They had great questions because I think they were told to come with questions. But seriously, the person that was catching my eye was Whitney, like front and center, like because she had the biggest smile on her face, like the whole time. And it was funny because I was there to kind of also, when we were done, try to talk to this other student that I thought was going to be interested in coming here. But Whitney, literally, I think you came up to me that day to let me know that you were interested and wanted to observe, and then reached out right after that. So, so glad that happened. But it brings us to another question that Dr. Galloway had brought up in talking about today, about expectations. And like from that moment of just like maybe hearing me talk about our practice, whatever, to now, like how has it changed for you as far as like, what did you expect? What did you expect coming in, and what do you think like going out after a year?
Yeah. I think when you think of, if you are maybe a third year, you're in audiology school right now and you're trying to think like, what do I want in a practice, or, for my externship, I was thinking long-term. So if you don't know, I'm from a rural community. And so I knew that, whatever I was doing, I was wanting to have something that sort of fit into that. And this is definitely a lot more diverse. It's like the most comprehensive practice, which is amazing. But I think, when I was looking and trying to decide, what do I want to do? It was important to me that I was going to be in an environment for a year where I was going to be learning from, individuals who, are really invested in their practice. And I think having you both, be the owners of your practice was something that was really important to me, because I was like, I want to make sure that I'm going to have people who are really invested in me and pouring into me, because as a student, yes, like I'm here to help, and I'm going to get hands-on experience, but I'm also here to learn. And so I was like, I want people who are going to be mentoring me, who are going to be pushing me, that are very diverse. And that was another thing that was interesting for me, was that, Dr. Phillips is very knowledgeable in lots of things, but sound sensitivity, hyperacusis, misophonia, tinnitus, that's something that I've gotten to sit in on appointments with that. And if you are a patient who's struggled with tinnitus or something like that, you're probably familiar with going to a physician's office and them just saying, oh, you just have to live with it. Or maybe you go somewhere and, they claim that maybe they're tinnitus professionals. And then by the end of it, they talked about your tinnitus and you have it. So, and that's kind of it. And so it's been really fun to learn about, tinnitus retraining therapy, other types of apps and things like that can be used. And then with Dr. Galloway, I knew that they both do cochlear implants, but I knew with Dr. Galloway, like she does see a lot of our cochlear implant patients. When I went to the school I attended, it was just kind of an unfortunate time where cochlear implants, it was something that we were supposed to get more hands-on, and then just through staffing and things like that, it just didn't happen how it has historically. And so I kind of came in with like, well, I've taken the class, but even, the way cochlear implants are programmed has actually even changed, since I took the class. And Dr. Galloway took the same class as me. So we even talk about how, different it is, but it's, it was really fun knowing like, I want to go somewhere where I'm going to get to really try things. I don't know. You don't know when you're in, graduate school exactly what you want to do and maybe what your specialty is. And so you're really not going to learn until you get to work with those types of patients. And then I feel like, from everything that I've gotten to do here, my favorite things to do are the vestibular testing. And then I haven't touched on it, but the auditory processing testing.
Yeah,
And those
I might bring that up.
Yeah, those are not on my radar. Like, I was excited to be able to do stuff with, vestibular, but I didn't know that I was going to love doing it. And so I think that's just been one expectation that's really exceeded, I think when you're investing time, energy, money into your education, in the back of your mind, you're always like, I really hope this is what I actually
like
do. And so, because even like once a week, clinic, it's not really enough. Like, it's not really enough to know if that's what you actually want to do. And so I think the biggest relief is being like, no, this is what I love to do. I love being able to work with patients who have different things going on, whether it's, clean and cut, hearing loss, age related, let's do hearing aids, to maybe we have someone who has normal hearing, but they're, perceiving difficulties processing, speech. I mean, I just feel like the doors have really opened wide for me here into all the possibilities. I think a lot of times if you Google what's an audiologist, you're going to get hearing tests and hearing aids. And it's just so much more than that. And I suspected that I would learn so much more here. And it's just exceeded my expectations in terms of like all the different avenues, what you can do still in a small practice where you're able to work and build relationships, not only with, your patients, but also your coworkers. I think that's just, I almost feel like I have a second family here. So it's like, yeah, I don't know. It really did just exceed all my expectations.
Well, I do feel like you compared to, so Mary Kate was our resident before Whitney. In your year, we've had a more consistent relationship with ENT providers, and we've had a relationship with Dr. Quinn since we've been in practice. But in this last year, I feel like we've had a lot more back and forth surgical cases, things like that, which is nice to be able to work with a doctor who, is responding to you and answering your questions and collaborating with you rather than just like, you do this, And so for me, I think that's valuable for a student to see too, because historically a lot of audiologists have not had, excellent working relationships with ENTs or other medical doctors, working underneath them or whatever. And so I think we have a unique relationship with him, and being able to, send patients back and forth, and the students see pre-op and post-op and, what implant might be appropriate for them and things like that. That's been kind of exciting too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I also think like just being able to put the puzzle pieces together, because you are able to do so much that, before they leave, and you're able to talk to them about what you think is going on, or this is going to be what the report is going to say. Like, you already know just by taking their history and halfway probably doing their examination.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I already know what's going to happen here. And that way, before they leave, because you're able to put the puzzle pieces together, I think it makes it a lot more interesting and also fun, because you know that when they leave the clinic or the office, that they have some answers, or they have like a path, or they have a plan, right? And so I think that in itself is super helpful, and something that is fulfilling as an audiologist, versus like, oh, I'm gonna have to refer you out here, right? You kind of already know what's gonna say, so you kind of give them as much information as possible. But I think that's one of the things why I like having a practice that can do so many things, because you're really helping the patients out as much as you can.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So I guess it comes down to the question of like, where are you going? What's going to happen from here on out? But again, if you're just joining us or catching up, this is Whitney's last week is next week, but we won't have a show. So we're kind of sending her off today. We have another new student coming in that we'll introduce you to probably about mid to end of May. If she's okay being on, as well as, like, we don't require our students to be on our show, but it's kind of fun, and I think that it grows a lot of leadership and confidence and different skills that you don't necessarily get all the time. So share with us what your plans are.
Okay, so I guess the big plan right now, if you've been into the office recently, you maybe have noticed that I am pregnant. So I am expecting a baby girl early June, maybe late May. You never know when they want to come. So first on the agenda is, being a mom, and I'm very excited about that. I think it's been something that has really been on my heart, and I know I've had some patients that are really excited for me. Sometimes, I think there's kind of this, well, you just are getting started with your degree and you're going to take a break. But I've always wanted to be a mom. To me, that's going to be like, I'm always going to be a mom first and an audiologist second. And so I'm very, very excited about not only the timing, but just this new opportunity to be a mom. So that's kind of like immediately following graduation. That's like the big step. I have accepted it's very part-time. I'll definitely have to find something else, but I have accepted like an educational audiologist position job back in my hometown. And so that'll look like screenings, mass screenings that they do at the beginning of the school years. They do have a few kids that have hours on their IEPs for direct contact time with audiologists. So that's something that my school district has recently had to outsource and do remotely. And so they're really excited not only to have, someone physically being able to do that, but also someone who one, lives in the area, two, has went to that school district, and three, have actually worked there before as a speech pathology assistant before I went to grad school. So I think they do like that they know who they're getting, which is really nice. We also have some kids that have just recently moved that have auditory processing on their IEP. So I'm excited about that to see what we can do. And then from there, just because I do know eventually I'm going to want to be a little bit more full-time, I don't know what the future holds. If I could move where I live, closer to here, I would just stay here, and you never know what the wind will blow. I'm definitely a person who, I think because I've had such a good experience here, I'm not, overly eager just to take a position just to say that I have a job. And I have a very supportive husband and family who are also in agreement. And so, right now the school thing is the main thing on my plate. And then once I kind of see how that's looking, if there's nothing else, maybe coming back here a couple days a week would, be something that's in the cards. But I just don't really know. And I'm trying to, be
go with the flow.
Yeah. And my personality is not quite like that. I am typically like, we need to know the plan right now. But I've never been a mom before, so I don't know what it's going to look like, but I do know long term, if I could be back here, or just doing something, similar. I love working in this type of setting. And so that's what's important to me. If the school thing, one day becomes more, full-time or permanent, that's great too. I'm just leaving the door open. I'd rather put feelers out and let a good opportunity come to me rather than just going out and trying to just like fill up my schedule. So that's the plan, but I've loved being here. I cannot believe it's been a year. That does not seem possible. I don't know where the time went. But yeah, I'm really excited for the new student that gets to come here and learn from both of you. It's just something that's really priceless, I feel like, is getting to experience, the thing that you've been dedicating your life to for the past 8 years, and to get to do it, love doing it, love who you're working with. I think that's definitely something special that I don't ignore, and it'll be really hard to leave.
Aww. Well, I think everything, I mean, what you have lined up is perfect timing for you.
Yeah.
It's great. I can't believe like you couldn't have timed it out better.
Yeah.
To have this nice break and to welcome you
Yeah.
into motherhood and really enjoy that time. And so, yeah, we just wanted to thank you. And again, you know, I know our patients are going to be sad. However, we always have great students, and
Yes,
so they'll be
everyone's
introduced to the
great.
next few great students. But yeah, definitely, I know our patients are going to miss you, and we're going to miss you, and we've had such a great time.
Yes.
Yes, we will miss you. If you notice that Whitney and I are matching, there may be a reel coming, but we have slowly morphed into each other over this year, including our fashion choices.
Yeah, and I've cut my hair short, you know, just really trying to be Dr. Galloway over here.
We keep showing up to work in very similar outfits, and
Yes.
so we decided to document it with
Yeah.
Yes.
evidence. So
Yeah.
that's
So
coming.
by next week, just keep
Yep.
your eyes open. You'll have to follow us. If you don't follow us, that means you have to follow us on Facebook or Instagram, because we're going to have a pretty fun reel planned for next week, for Whitney's last week. So yeah, with that, we won't see you next week, but we will be back the following week. So jump on one of our social media sites and wish Whitney well. But thanks for joining in again today. We'll see you guys later.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.